Hey guys, today we're going to talk about racial injustice. And it's not particularly that I feel qualified to talk about this because I don't, but it's because I understand as a white guy that we kind of feel like we don't know what to do sometimes. That it's not our fight. And that's the worst possible way for a white person to feel that this isn't our fight, that it's not our responsibility to stand behind our black brothers and sisters and to help them reach for equality. In fact, it is our responsibility, both as members of society and even more so as Christians who are supposed to love everyone. We at Berean have a core value that is unconditional love for all people, and that includes unconditional love for black people. And if they're mistreated, well, we should feel mistreated as well. So I'm going to splash up here on the video a couple contextual things, a list of some controversial police killings over the last several decades of black men and women, and a little bit of a map, a statistics map that will show you the discrepancy between the populations of black people in many states in the US and the numbers of individuals that are killed by police that are African American descent. The reason why I'm showing you this short little history lesson and these statistics is because, well, hopefully it gives you some context. If you need more context, then how about this? Black men in the US are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by a police officer than their white counterparts. You see, there's a need for change in the US, and we, regardless of our race, should be a part of that change. We, as Christians especially, have a calling from God to be voices of social justice for the oppressed and the downtrodden. So here's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about why Christians should be especially concerned about what's going on and why God cares about this sort of thing. And then we're going to spend a while talking about specific action steps that you and I, regardless of our background, regardless of our culture, regardless of our race, can take to back up our black brothers and sisters as they reach for justice in the US. So why do we care? Even if we buy all the statistics, even if we understand that, why do we as Christians care? And well, the answer is because we should. Because these are people, these are the children of God, made in God's image, just like you and me. And you would expect, if we were going through something like this, that other people would care about us. So why would we, as white Christians, not care about black people going through horrible injustices? And if you need even more proof, we'll go to Deuteronomy 10:17 through 19, or read the book of Amos, where God repeatedly turns his face towards people who are disenfranchised, who are unloved, who are left behind by the system. I think if God were rewriting these texts today, he would say, you know what? Your ancestors were immigrants from England, from Spain, from Germany, from Ireland, from Poland. And just as you once were immigrants, as you once were foreigners and minorities in a strange land, and you were shown the love of God, then why should you not show the love of God to minorities today? God has a special love for people that are left behind by the system. And as Christians, if we're going to say that we're followers of God, we have to do the same thing. Christianity is a religion of positive commands, a religion of do this. And we think of Christianity as a religion of don't do this, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat. And yeah, sure, we aren't supposed to do certain things. But the primary gist, the primary push of Christianity is do things for others, be generous, and most importantly, be loving. And how can we say that we're being loving to our black brothers and sisters if we don't support them as they struggle for equal rights, for equal representation, for equal treatment in our courts of law and by our police officers? Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that all police are bad. I'm certainly not saying that. What I am saying is there's enough cases of injustice going on in the world that we as Christians just have to find a way to address it. And that brings me to the last part of this video, the takeaway. What should we get from all this? Well, quite frankly, we should get that Black Lives Matter. Black lives matter to God, and they should matter to you. And here's a few practical application steps that white people like me or anyone else who's struggling with this issue can take to address from the chair that you're sitting in right now, even to begin addressing these issues and standing in solidarity with our Black brothers and sisters. The first is something that I'm very fond of mentioning. My wife is very fond of talking about as well. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy. Basically, just a simplified version of it is when you have a thought that you know is negative, a thought that isn't positive, or in this case, a thought that is potentially racist or anti-productive in a society that's trying to address racism. You acknowledge the thought, you term that thought exactly what it is. It's a negative thought, and then you replace it with a different thought. So for example, if you're driving down the street and you see a Black man walking down the street and you feel the urge to lock your door because you just don't think you can trust him, you stop and you ask yourself, would I have the same reaction if this person were white? And if the answer is no, I don't think I would, then you replace that thought. You say, well, this person is probably just going about their business, out getting groceries, going to work, going to see a friend, just out for some exercise, whatever. He's no threat to me. I'm just going to relax. And by replacing that thought over and over again, eventually actually change the way that you think. A second way that we can address this as Christians specifically is, well, prayer. I know it's simple, but prayer, and I mean actually praying. If you're just commenting thoughts and prayers on every Facebook post you see, that's not helping anything. But actually getting on your knees and praying, burying your head on your office desk and crying out to God, prayer can have an amazing effect on the world. And that's the second way that we can affect change. There's a third one as well, and honestly one that I was disturbed to realize I hadn't already done, and that's following Black leaders and social groups on Facebook and other social media. I was convinced that I was one of those people that always, followed people that thought and looked different than me, that I'd beaten the Facebook algorithm, that I wasn't just liking pages that already thought like I did. But then when I was going through my likes, I realized I hadn't. I wasn't sure that I had even liked a single page that was run by a Black man or woman. I certainly didn't like any racial justice pages, and that, as a result, my feed was filled with content from white people. And I'm a white person too, and I think I put out okay content, but if I want to be a part of the solution to racial inequality in the US, I have to hear from Black voices. So I spent probably 15, 20, or 30 minutes earlier today on the day of recording just liking different social groups, different Black activists, sending out friend requests because I realized I need to fill my social media page with voices that understand what Black people are going through. And that by listening to those people, again, it's going to change the way that I think, and it's going to give me ideas for how I can be part of the solution. So follow Black leaders and social groups on Facebook and socials. A few ideas, I'll post these down below as well, I'll put them up on the screen, are Equal Justice Initiative, Dream Defenders, that one's specific to Florida, the NAACP, which most of you guys have probably heard of, Chicago Roar from my friends in Illinois and Wisconsin, and Crossroads Anti-Racism Organization and Training. That one's based out of Springfield, Illinois, for anyone in that area. The next thing that you can do is vote with your money. Vote with your money. That's unbelievably important. First of all, you can do this by supporting Black-owned businesses, private businesses, and I'll put a few suggestions again down below, and I'll plaster some up on the screen. But remember, when you support a business that is owned by a minority, you're not just giving someone money, giving someone a livelihood, but you're actually giving them a political voice as well. We know, if you've studied any political science at all or just follow the news, that if someone has money, they have a bigger political voice. So if a people group, if African Americans or Hispanics or whoever in the US, if they're given a bigger voice in the marketplace, they get a bigger voice in politics as well. So you can show your support by supporting Black-owned businesses. You can also vote with your money by donating to racial justice causes, such as the NAACP, local groups, bail funding groups, or legal defense groups for minorities. If you're still listening at this point, then I want to issue a challenge. I normally don't talk about my personal charitable giving, but for this one, I think it's kind of important. Maggie and I earlier today, despite all of our student loans and just moving and all that, decided to give $100 to the NAACP. I want to challenge you to match or increase that gift. If this is something that you want to do, if you have the spare money, I'm not trying to take food off your table, but match that donation. Donate at least $100 to the NAACP because they're doing amazing work to advance people that are members of minority ethnic groups in the U.S. And frankly, they can use all the help they can get. Last of all, in order to affect change as a white person that kind of doesn't know what you're doing, if you're anything like me, you can vote with your vote. And this one requires a little bit of effort on your part. It means you have to look up your local, state, and national representatives. You have to do your research. But figure out what the representation in your area for your congressional district is doing to further racial justice. And if they have a bad track record, vote them out of office. Replace them with someone who's going to do better, because we let the people who are refusing to pass laws on this issue, refusing to hold questionable decisions by police or other government entities responsible, well, we're never going to see change. But if you do your research and you vote for people who have a good track record on these issues, you make sure they get the promotions that they deserve, that they end up in places where they can affect change, well, I think we can see a whole new country in a couple more years. So that's it. That's my idiot's guide to white people trying to make a difference, and I hope it was helpful to all of you. Normally, this is a part where I'm like, please like and subscribe and follow, but I'm not going to do that today because, frankly, this isn't about me. This isn't about my church. This is about us as Christians, as many of us non-minority individuals, finding a way to stand behind our Black brothers and sisters. Instead, I'm going to say, look down at the bottom. There's going to be a ton of links there. Read some articles, educate yourself, donate to some worthy causes, support some Black-owned businesses, because, frankly, you and I, the decisions that we make can make a huge impact in this struggle. We are a part of this, and we stand behind our Black brothers and sisters in their struggle.